yes, the Bugatti has been crashed.
On that chassis number of vehicle, they will not supply any component through a Bugatti dealership.
With the right equipment and only a few people in the world with the right training to be able to do.
Imagine a car worth $3 million. It is not just any car. It is a Bugatti Chiron, one of the most powerful and advanced machines ever built by human hands. It goes from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 2.5 seconds. Its engine produces over 1,400 horsepower. Every single part of it is made with extreme care and precision. It is the kind of car that most people will never even see in real life, let alone touch or drive. Now imagine that this very car gets badly damaged in a crash. The insurance company looks at the damage, does the math, and decides it is not worth fixing. They call it a total loss and sell it off as a wreck. In the eyes of the manufacturer, Bugatti, this car is finished. It has left their official system. They will not help fix it. They will not supply parts for it through normal channels. They will not give access to the software that makes it work. As far as they're concerned, this car should simply disappear quietly. But it did not disappear. Instead, it ended up in the hands of a man named Matt Armstrong, a British YouTuber who had built his entire career around doing things that most people said could not be done. And what happened next became one of the most talked about stories in the automotive world. It was not just about fixing a car. It became a debate about who really owns a vehicle after it's sold, how much power a manufacturer should have over a product that someone else legally paid for, and whether the word impossible sometimes really just means, we would rather you didn't. This is the full story of Bugatti versus Matt Armstrong, told clearly in plain language from the very beginning. Before we can understand why this story became so important, we need to understand who Matt Armstrong is and what made him the right person to take on a project like this. Matt Armstrong is a car rebuilder from the United Kingdom who runs a very popular YouTube channel. By 2024, his channel had grown to millions of subscribers, and his videos regularly receive hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of views. But his channel is not like most car channels on YouTube. He does not just show you the finished result. He does not make everything look clean and easy. Instead, he films everything, every problem, every setback, every moment of confusion and frustration. When something goes wrong, the camera keeps rolling. When costs go up unexpectedly, he tells his viewers exactly how much. When he does not know how to do something, he says so out loud. This kind of total honesty is unusual on the internet, where most creators only show their best moments. And it is exactly what earned Matt Armstrong such a loyal and trusting audience. Before taking on the Bugatti, Armstrong had already rebuilt many other exotic and high-end cars. Ferrari, Lamborghini, McLaren. He had taken apart and put back together vehicles that most mechanics would never dare to touch. Each project was filmed in full, and his viewers watched him figure out problems in real time. He was not a factory-trained specialist with a team of engineers behind him. He was a skilled, determined individual working transparently in front of the world. When he announced he had purchased a crashed Bugatti Chiron, his followers knew this was different. This was not just a more expensive car. This was a vehicle that the manufacturer itself had essentially declared off limits. The challenge was not just mechanical. It was a battle against a system designed to make independent repair as difficult as possible. And Matt Armstrong decided to document every single step of that battle for the world to see that to understand why rebuilding this Bugatti was such a big deal. You first need to understand how Bugatti as a company works and how it is different from brands like Toyota, Ford, or even Ferrari. Most car manufacturers, even luxury ones, have a global network of dealers and service centers. If your car breaks down or gets damaged, you take it to an authorized dealer who has the tools, the parts, and the training to fix it. The system is controlled, but it is not completely closed. Independent mechanics can still access many parts and get many repairs done outside the official network, especially once a car gets older. Bugatti operates very differently. It produces only a tiny number of vehicles each year, sometimes as few as 60 or 70 cars globally. These are not just luxury vehicles. They are technological masterpieces that push the absolute limits of what is physically possible with a road car. The level of engineering involved is so advanced that even most trained mechanics have never encountered anything like it. In November 2021, Bugatti's ownership structure changed significantly. A joint venture was formed between Porsche AG and the Rimac Group, a Croatian technology and electric vehicle company. This new company was called Bugatti Rimac. The Rimac Group, led by its founder Mate Rimac, took a 55% majority ownership, while Porsche kept 45%. This change was important because the Rimac Group is deeply focused on technology, software, and digital control systems. Under this new structure, Bugatti's approach to repairs and servicing became even more strictly controlled. The official position was clear and consistent. Bugatti vehicles must be serviced only through authorized Bugatti centers, using factory-approved parts, factory-approved tools, and factory-approved software systems. Any repair done outside this official network was considered unsupported, unsafe, and incompatible with Bugatti standards. This policy was not just about protecting the brand's image, though that was certainly part of it. It was also about the real technical complexity of these vehicles. A modern Bugatti is not just a powerful engine and a beautiful body. It is a rolling computer system. Every major component is connected to an electronic control unit, or ECU. These units are encrypted and locked. They only work with other approved components. Without manufacturer authorization, many of these systems simply refuse to function. This level of digital control meant that owning a Bugatti did not just mean owning the physical parts. It meant depending on Bugatti's ongoing cooperation for the car to work properly. And once a vehicle fell outside the official system, for example, by being declared a total write-off and sold through salvage channels, that cooperation ended. The specific car at the center of the story was a Bugatti Chiron, the flagship model that sits at the very top of modern automotive achievement. Depending on the exact specification and customization options chosen by its original owner, a new Bugatti Chiron costs somewhere around $3 million US. For that price, you get a car with an 8-liter quad-turbocharged W16 engine. That means 16 cylinders arranged in a W shape with 4 turbochargers forcing air in. The result is 1,479 horsepower and a top speed electronically limited to 261 miles per hour. The engineering involved in making a car like this is mind-boggling. The aerodynamics alone require hundreds of hours of computer simulation and wind tunnel testing. The body panels are made from carbon fiber so light and strong that it took years to develop the manufacturing process. Even the smallest bolt on a Bugatti Chiron is made to a standard that most manufacturers only dream about. When this particular Chiron was involved in a serious accident, the damage was extensive. The insurance company, after assessing the cost of repairs through official Bugatti channels, decided the car was not worth fixing. It was declared a total loss, what the industry calls a write-off, and sold through salvage auction channels. Once a car reaches this point, it has officially left the manufacturer's support network. Bugatti would not help repair it. They would not supply parts through their dealership network. They would not grant access to the proprietary software systems needed to make the car function properly. The car was, in their view, done. It was in this condition, a $3 million wreck sitting outside Bugatti's official system, that Matt Armstrong purchased it. The exact price he paid was not publicly disclosed, but salvage title hypercars like this typically sell for a fraction of their original value, often somewhere between 10 and 30%. Even at that reduced price, the investment was enormous by any normal standard. But more than the money, what Armstrong was taking on was the challenge of rebuilding something that a multi-billion-dollar manufacturer had essentially declared impossible to restore through any means other than their own official channels. From the very first day that Matt Armstrong began working on the Bugatti Chiron, he made it clear to his audience that this was not going to be like his previous projects. He publicly acknowledged that Bugatti did not support the rebuild. He was open about the fact that getting parts would be difficult and that the software systems in the car were locked down. He did not pretend these obstacles did not exist. Instead, he invited his viewers to watch as he tried to figure out how to get around each one step by step in real time. The mechanical side of the rebuild, the physical work of repairing or replacing damaged body panels, structural components, and mechanical parts, was extremely complex and expensive, but it was solvable. Parts could be sourced from various places. Skilled craftspeople could fabricate or repair components. The physical damage, however severe, was the kind of challenge that skilled hands and enough money and patience could eventually address. The digital side was a completely different story. The Bugatti Chiron relies on a network of electronic control units, sophisticated computers that manage everything from the engine and transmission to suspension, braking system, and safety features. These ECUs are encrypted and locked to specific vehicle configurations. They are designed to communicate only with other authorized components, and only with Bugatti's own proprietary diagnostic software. When Armstrong tried to source replacement ECUs and electronic components, he ran into immediate walls. Without Bugatti's cooperation, these components could not be properly programmed or authorized. Without proper authorization, the systems simply would not communicate with each other the way they needed to. Fault codes appeared that could not be cleared. Systems refused to recognize new components as valid. Safety features remained disabled because they could not verify that the car met the required specifications. This was not a technical failure in the traditional sense. It was a deliberate design feature. These cars were built to require manufacturer involvement for any significant repair. Armstrong documented all of this clearly. His viewers could see exactly what was happening. A car that was physically being repaired correctly, with the right parts in the right places, but that was being held back by software restrictions that had nothing to do with whether the car was actually ready to run. The distinction was subtle but enormously important, and it would become the heart of the entire controversy. Throughout the entire period of the rebuild, Bugatti's position never changed. The company did not respond specifically to Matt Armstrong's project in any official statement directed at him personally, but the manufacturer's overall messaging was clear and consistent. Vehicles that had left the official support network, particularly those that had been declared write-offs and sold through salvage channels, would not receive manufacturer support for repairs. This was not presented as a punishment or a personal judgment. It was framed as a matter of safety, technical necessity, and brand integrity. Bugatti's leadership argued that their vehicles are so technically complex that unauthorized repairs could create serious safety risks. A hypercar that produces over 1,400 horsepower and travels at speeds approaching 300 kilometers per hour is not something you want to put back on the road unless every system has been verified by people with the right training, tools, and knowledge. Mate Rimac, the CEO of Bugatti Rimac, spoke publicly on multiple occasions about the importance of software control and intellectual property protection. He discussed the risks of unauthorized access to vehicle software systems and the dangers of third-party modifications on vehicles as advanced as modern Bugattis. His statements were general in nature. They did not call out Armstrong by name or specifically address the Chiron rebuild. But the philosophy they expressed was perfectly clear. Manufacturer oversight was not optional. It was essential. It is important to note that Bugatti never actually claimed it was physically impossible to put the car back together. What they consistently communicated was that doing so without their authorization was unsafe, unsupported, and contrary to their policies. This is a meaningful distinction, and it becomes very important when we look at what happened later in the story. Bugatti also had perfectly legitimate legal and business reasons for their position. Their vehicles represent some of the most advanced intellectual property in the automotive world. The software systems, the engineering designs, the calibration data, all of this represents billions of dollars of investment in research and development. Allowing unauthorized access to any of this would set a precedent that could have serious consequences for brand and for the safety standards they had worked so hard to establish. Despite all the obstacles, the software restrictions, the lack of manufacturer support, the difficulty in sourcing parts, and the enormous technical complexity of the vehicle, Matt Armstrong and his team kept working. Slowly, problem by problem, they found ways to address each challenge. Some solutions involved sourcing components from alternative channels. Some required creative technical approaches to deal with the software restrictions. All of it was documented and shared publicly, which meant that every small victory was celebrated by a community of millions of followers who had been watching the project for months. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Bugatti Chiron started. The engine, that incredible, impossibly complex 8-liter, 16-cylinder masterpiece, came to life. The car moved under its own power. It was not just running in a limited or partial way. It was operating. It could be driven. For the people who have been following the rebuild, this was an extraordinary moment. But for the broader automotive world, it was something much more significant. It was proof, not theory, not speculation, not a claim made on the internet. Actual, filmed, verifiable proof that a written-off Bugatti Chiron could be brought back to a functional state without the manufacturer's cooperation. Armstrong shared the footage publicly, as he had shared everything else throughout the project. The car was shown starting, driving, and running as it was designed to run. There was no ambiguity about what had been achieved. The car existed. It worked. It was real. The reaction from viewers was enormous. Millions of people who had followed the project from the beginning celebrated the result. But beyond the celebration, something more important was happening in the comments, in automotive forums, and in media coverage of the story. People were starting to ask a question that had not really been asked so loudly before. If this car was impossible to repair without Bugatti's help, then why was it running? The successful completion of the Bugatti Chiron rebuild forced a very uncomfortable conversation into the open. To understand why, we need to go back to the distinction we made earlier, the difference between something being physically impossible and something being policy restricted. Before the rebuild, Bugatti's messaging, though never explicitly stating that a salvage Chiron could never be repaired, had created a general impression among most people that such a project was simply impossible without manufacturer involvement. The complexity of the vehicle, the encrypted software, the locked ECUs, the proprietary systems, all of these pointed toward the same conclusion in the minds of most observers. This car cannot be fixed by anyone outside Bugatti's official network. The rebuild demonstrated that this conclusion was not accurate, at least not in the absolute way that many people had assumed. The car was not physically impossible to repair. The barriers were real and significant, but they were primarily barriers of policy and software restriction, not barriers of genuine technical impossibility. This is a crucial distinction. A car that cannot be repaired because the damage is too severe, because the chassis is bent beyond fixing or the engine is shattered beyond recovery, is in a genuinely different category from a car that can be repaired, but that the manufacturer has chosen to lock down through software systems. In the first case, the limitation is physical reality. In the second case, the limitation is a business decision. The rebuilt Chiron belonged to the second category. Its systems could be restored. Its engine could run. Its physical damage could be addressed. What had been stopping it was not the impossibility of repair, but the design choice to make unauthorized repair as difficult as possible through digital controls. None of this meant that Bugatti had done anything dishonest or that their concerns about safety were not genuine. Their policies were real and they were consistently stated. But the general narrative that had grown up around those policies, the widespread belief that a crashed Bugatti was simply a done car, beyond any hope of independent restoration, was challenged directly and publicly by what Armstrong had achieved. And once a working example existed, that narrative could never fully recover. One of the most frequently asked questions that came out of the story was whether mate Rimac, the CEO of Bugatti Rimac, had lied about the possibility of repairing a salvaged Bugatti. This is a question worth taking seriously and answering carefully. The honest answer is probably not in the literal sense. There is no publicly confirmed statement in which Rimac explicitly said that a crashed Bugatti Chiron could never be repaired under any circumstances by anyone outside the official network. His public statements focus on the risks of unauthorized access to vehicle software, the dangers of third-party modifications, and the importance of manufacturer oversight, all of which are real concerns that he was entitled to raise. What happened was more subtle than a direct lie. Over time, the consistent message from Bugatti leadership that unauthorized repairs were unsafe, impractical, and incompatible with the complexity of modern hypercars created an impression in the minds of most people that such repairs were not just inadvisable, but effectively impossible. People heard, "This should not be done," and "This is extremely dangerous without our systems," and concluded, "This cannot be done." That gap between what was said and what was understood is where the controversy lives. When the rebuilt Chiron started running, it did not contradict a specific false statement that Rimac had made. It contradicted the conclusion that most people had reasonably drawn from everything Bugatti had been saying. And that is uncomfortable because it means the messaging, whether intentionally or not, had created a false impression without technically containing a false statement. This distinction is important for understanding the story fairly. Calling it a lie in the strict sense would not be accurate and would not be fair. But saying that there was a significant gap between what Bugatti's messaging implied and what independent effort proved to be true, that is entirely accurate, and it is where the legitimate criticism lies. Matt Armstrong's Bugatti rebuild did not happen in isolation. It landed right in the middle of a much larger debate that has been growing across the entire automotive industry, and indeed across many other industries involving complex technology. This debate is called the right to repair, and it is one of the most important consumer rights issues of our time. The basic question is simple. When you buy something, do you have the right to repair it yourself, or have someone of your choosing repair it for you? For most of human history, the answer was obviously yes. If you bought a table and it broke, you could fix it yourself. If you bought a watch and it stopped working, you could take it to any watchmaker you wanted. Ownership meant control, including the right to repair. But in the modern age of software-driven devices, that simple principle has been increasingly challenged. Manufacturers have discovered that they can maintain significant control over their products long after the sale by building those products around software systems that only the manufacturer can access or authorize. Your smartphone requires the manufacturer's approval to install certain software. Your farm tractor might need the manufacturer's diagnostic tools to address certain faults. And your Bugatti Chiron requires the manufacturer's cooperation for many of its systems to function properly. Supporters of right to repair argue that this level of manufacturer control goes too far. They say that when you spend your money on a product, whether it costs $500 or $3 million, you should have genuine ownership of it, including the ability to repair and maintain it without depending on the original manufacturer's ongoing cooperation. They point out that manufacturer control over repairs is not purely about safety, it is also about business. Controlling the repair market means controlling ongoing revenue from parts and service. It means preventing competition from independent repair shops. It means maintaining brand image by ensuring that only official, expensive repairs are done on your vehicles. Armstrong's rebuild became a powerful example in this debate because it showed very concretely what manufacturer control looks like in practice. It showed where that control is enforced and how difficult it is to work around. And it showed that independent repair was not always as impossible as manufacturers' messaging sometimes implied. One of the interesting aspects of the story is what Bugatti did not do. They did not send lawyers after Matt Armstrong. They did not issue a cease and desist letter demanding that he stop the project.